be live now. Yeah, hello everybody. This Hangout on air is live, and this is the Festive special. This is our Black Ops Festive. That's my excuse for dressing up. Tony unfortunately can't make it, so we've got a Tony proxy. But we do have James Lindsay and Steve Green here and myself. And we have been testing Stellarium, and I think James is now going to demo that for us.
Well, with a bit of luck, you'll be able to see my shared screen. One of the reasons I'm demoing it is that it only really shares from my screen at the moment. So you'll currently see a black screen with perhaps some stars on it and a big S in the middle. That's because if I look outside my window, it's black with a few stars. There's no S to be seen, but then I'm looking east. Stellarium is a planetarium application. It sticks the universe in the window on your desktop and lets you play with it, or at least lets you observe it in different ways. It doesn't particularly let you play with it. We thought that we would have a nicer time testing if we went to Bethlehem. So you can change the location. Let's pop up the location window. Bethlehem, thank you. Not Beetle anything. Presumably one of the Palestinian territories is the one we want. There we are, that's what it calls itself, that's done. So we've moved to Earth Bethlehem at 775 meters. And the other thing I think we should probably do is change the date. So we're going to change it to, those of you who know what, was it -4? Obviously we're going to 0 AD. We're going to December the 25th. And you can see December the 25th at 8 o'clock at night. It appears to be light somewhat in Bethlehem. We can see some fields that Steve feels is probably France. I think I'd agree with him. So we can see fields, we can see the sky, you can move yourself around. I can zoom in on particular things. Don't really want to zoom in on the buildings. There might be somebody there, but you can zoom all the way into Mars. It is, I will point out, it is a stable there. If I was to double click on Mars, it tells me things about Mars. Let me zoom back out again. It's quite a joyful thing to play in. So that's where we are. We're in Bethlehem on Christmas Eve, I guess. Can you hear that?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that's my child who can't find me. So there we are, Christmas Eve, we'll make it midnight. That's why I really enjoy doing these webinars, because I've got a 2-year-old little daddy. I'll have to go and put her to bed shortly, but I'll finish this demonstration first because you matter more. So here we are, we're looking at the sky. I'm going to do a couple of things to this that I think are appropriate. We can change how the sky looks. I can say, I would like it not to twinkle. I'd like to turn the atmosphere off. I definitely want to show the various planets. I think I'd like to turn the ground off completely, so I should be able to see behind me. As it happens, I also want to change some of the displays. Let me zoom out a little further. There we are. There's the sky. I can move around. I can pan. It's all very exciting here in Stellarium. Last thing I'm going to do, just because it's nice and seasonal, I'm going to turn the star and hopefully now we'll see constellations. Do I press C for constellations? I do not. I press R. R is for art. There. Can you see the art? There we have many constellations all around us. So you're fully informed about what is going on in the sky, and we can request Indian Vedic constellations, or we can request Inuit constellations, Mongolian constellations. You'll see that the names change as well. So there's plenty of data hiding behind this. It's masses of configuration. This is another foolishly capable application we've chosen to test, and none of us are by any means astronomers. So with that, I'm going to leave you staring at the sun through the earth on Christmas Eve, at the birth of Christ, obviously, and hand you over to Alan while I go and put the baby to bed.
Okay, so that was very professional. That was like watching Sky at Night or something, which I've never watched. So I'm sure it's exactly like watching Sky at Night. So the reason I won first is that I have no idea about this domain at all. So most of the testing, so James is showing you much more than I actually saw in the application. Anytime, this is a thick client app. So anytime I'm working with a thick client app, what I tend to do is try and install it in a virtual machine first. And this application has an interesting install in that when I tried to install it on old apps, old virtual machines, it just wouldn't start. And I couldn't get it to work. And then I noticed on some of the later machines, that some of the newer machines I was installing it on, some of them gave me an option to install something that had special graphics capabilities and something that didn't. So I think the installer determines what kind of machine it's in and gives you options if it thinks you're on a really low machine. But some of the virtual machines didn't report to it, it's on a really low machine, so I didn't get that option. But I did get it working on an IE8 XP machine and an IE7, IE11 Windows 7 machine, both of those from modern.ie, which is where Microsoft give free virtual machines for you to use for your testing. Now let me share some of my notes for a second. So there we go. So you can see that when I started, I didn't get very far. I set it to Bethlehem as well on the current date. But you can see from the screenshot in front of us here that at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's really dark, apparently. And at midnight, it's bright sunshine. Now, I wasn't quite sure that was true, but I have no oracle. I've never been to Bethlehem, I don't know. So I went online to find some webcams in the associated area to have a look. And this one that shows the western wall was quite light. So it might be the same as this, but it might also just have lots of lights, because this one in, where is this one? The Sheraton Hotel somewhere, very close by, was pitch black. So there were lots of lights on. So I have no idea whether that's a Stellarium issue or a Bethlehem issue. So the other thing I went was, I set the location, which is about as good as I'm going to get, and then started having a look at the date dialog. Now the date dialog is pretty interesting in that all these fields interrelate. So you change the date to adjust some seconds, the Julian date changes, the modified Julian date changes. All these fields have up and down arrows, so adjusting one adjusts the other. So I tried entering lots of different combinations of minuses, pluses. I assume negative years is an okay thing. I had a quick look for leap years, and the system was fine calculating leap years. However, again, I'm not very good at calculating leap years, so I went to find an oracle, and the online application that I found wouldn't calculate leap years before 1582, because apparently that's when the Gregorian calendar was invented. So the current leap year calculation that we use is based on that. So I have no idea whether these things are good or not. However, I wanted to see how far back in time Stellarium would let me go. And if in Stellarium, if you go back to year minus 99,999 on the 3rd of January at 5:16:13, time stops. Or at least it did on my Mac. On my Windows machine, I had to go back to 13:16:13 before time would stop. Because Stellarium itself normally increments time all the time. So I think at this point, we've hit some sort of numerical representation limit within the system. And at this point, as soon as you start going up or down the arrows, the time starts going up instead of down. If I start clicking down in the dialog, it starts going up instead. What else? So I, when I'm testing, like to try and observe what's going on. So I had to try and get it going through a proxy server, because there are searches and things where Stellarium will hook off to public astronomy sites to pull back lots of data. So I had to read the documentation to find out how to do this, but fortunately James had sent through some documentation so I could look at that on the wiki. But it took me a while to get it set up through a proxy, and I couldn't do it on my virtual machine. I had to do it on my real machine. But that was because when Stellarium installs itself into your user profile, it doesn't add the proxy section into the config, so you have to add that yourself, but it's in the default in the application, and I was amending that instead. Now, there's a thing called the Simbad Server that when you do a search, Stellarium will connect to. And I wasn't sure whether I was getting issues on that or not, but I think this unrecognized identifier spell mistake, which you can't see very well, I wonder if I can zoom in. Probably not. Let me make that big. So these spelling errors are coming from the Simbad server rather than from Stellarium itself. But what I was expecting, I was doing a search for Pluto. I was expecting it to find Pluto, but these external Simbad servers are really astronomical and have lots of really technical detail. So it's finding strange stars that just have kind of numbers as their names. And what I did see is when the server doesn't respond well, like a 404 request, when Stellarium makes a request to Simbad and gets a 404 back, it doesn't give you a very good error message. What it does is it shows you the get URL that it tried to hit, but it doesn't truncate it very well. So there are certain HTTP errors that it doesn't handle particularly well. Some it handles pretty well, like you need authorization. It handles delays well, but some of them it will show you the get URL, and that's consistent everywhere that Stellarium tries to connect to an external server. So I only found two places that Stellarium connects externally: the the search and when it's downloading catalogs for extra data, and both of those it showed me the same error messages. So I then went on to screenshots, where you can do Control S to take a screenshot. And given that it's a screenshot, you start to think of things like, well, what happens if the directory doesn't exist? What happens if the file is already there? So Stellarium outputs its files in numerical order. So it outputs something to Stellarium 01.ping, Stellarium 02.ping, then 03. So I created a 04 and then took the screenshot, and it quite happily adds it as number 5. I deleted number 2, and it quite happily finds that number 2 isn't in there, so it uses number 2 as the black. I thought I had found a bug with the images coming out in inverse, but I didn't notice that there's a checkbox on the GUI that says take the screenshot in inverse. I'm not quite sure why someone would want that, but they clearly do, and that's what this is. So there's so much information on the screen that sometimes I wasn't exactly sure what I was testing. When the directory doesn't exist, Stellarium doesn't give you an issue. It doesn't give you an error, or at least not visually. Stellarium has some really handy testing functionality in it. It comes with a debug version, which is really good because you run that, it's a thick client, it has more logging in there. But it also has, if you look in the help dialog, the actual application log, and you can refresh that and see what is going on. And it does report these screenshot errors to the log. So then I was just kind of, I found that when I was playing with this app, I wasn't spotting any issues because I don't know the domain. So I'm just making it do things that seem quite cool, like these mini worlds or whatever else. But I couldn't see any problems with it. But because Stellarium lets you adjust time and fast forward time, you can see again what the upper limit on the Stellarium time is without having to do very much. And again, it's a 9999999 value. And again, when you get to the maximum limit, time stops. Although that little dialogue that you saw on the top left when James was demonstrating that had all the numbers going around all the time continues to go around all the time. So time doesn't really stop, right? It's still moving its simulation round, but the reported time stops. What else? Oh yes, and I did find that when I was trying to recreate one of the problems, that when it starts, my Stellarium starts at 00000 GPS coords, and at some point it checks the GeoIP, and I think the URL that it's using has some issues, and so it defaults immediately to Paris. So if I don't do anything, I'll come in nowhere, then I'll get transported to Paris magically by Stellarium. So I have summarized all this at the top, and we can go through that later on. But for me, it was very much a functional test and looking at kind of very obvious dialogues and the file interaction. So I will now pass you over to Steve, because Steve did much, much better and much cooler things than I did. No pressure.
Well, thanks a lot for that. Right, let me share my notes, if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. So you should. Can you actually read any of that?
I can.
Good. Okay. So, like the other guys, I started off by thinking in terms of what sort of things can we test. Like the others, I've got very little domain knowledge, and one of the obvious things with this is there's a colossal amount of data, and we have no real oracles. So how on earth can we tell if it's doing the right thing? So taking a step back, I thought what we can do is we can look for internal inconsistencies. You can do that with a lot of complex apps like this. Just look for things where it contradicts itself. I thought we might find some rendering errors. There's a lot of complex visual stuff going on. So that was a possibility. And going right back to basics, just simple input constraint, data validation, those sorts of really basic things. But I like doing those sorts of tests when I've got an app I don't understand, because you always find bugs and it gives you a sense of progress and you're actually achieving something. And the one thing I thought I could test is solar eclipses, because that's one place I have got an oracle. On the web there are various sources that tell you the dates and times of every solar eclipse, and it's really easy to see on the screen when the moon goes in front of the sun. I don't need to understand any of the numbers that are being displayed on the screen. It's something I can test visually. So that's the sort of areas of testing I decided to focus on. One of the things I found throughout the project was difficulty in describing what I was doing, and in order to track my test coverage and report issues and describe to other people what I'd done. And I never found an answer to that. Sometimes I wasn't sure what I was seeing, and yet I had no way to convey to someone else, like, if you do this, that and the other, you'll see something, and can you explain to me what it is? I don't know if the other guys sort of found a solution to that, but when you're zooming around the universe, trying to describe where you are and what you're looking at, I found quite challenging. So the first test I did, I just picked the location search, and picking up on one of the rules that was on the screen there, it says that there are no sort of diacritics, everything's in plain English text, and straight away, or very rapidly, just by scrolling through the list of locations, I found something that contradicted that. So the first one I found was here, where we've got Almeria spelt with an I and spelt with an I with an accent. And depending on how you type, which letter you type, you will get either one or the other. Now, some search systems are intelligent enough to actually find both. This one isn't. So there's a data quality issue there. And there were numerous other examples of that. So I carried on scrolling and found Oh yeah, I'll show you a screenshot of another one that I came across. Here we go. So hopefully you can read that. So here's a tooltip saying there's no diacritics, and here in the list above it are three locations that have diacritics, and you have to search for this A with the 2 dots, otherwise you'll never find those locations. So I don't think they're probably the most popular locations, but it's a data quality issue nonetheless. So the next question, having found some examples of those, the next question was, how can I find all of them? That list is colossal, and you can't just look through the whole list. So I was thinking, how can I find some other way to find all those? So I had a look through the file system and found these .cat data files in this stars folder. And try as I may, I could not find a way to view those. They're full of binary stuff, totally unreadable. Tried opening them in various applications and never found a way to do that. If we could open that up and run a proper search tool against the contents, we could find every instance of all of these accented characters and diacritics and so on. So if anyone's got any ideas of how to open a .cat file, I'd love to hear it. The next thing I tried in that function was clicking on the map and seeing what locations were listed. And for the most part that gave sensible results. But on one occasion, which I'll find, here we go, we've got, as you can see up here, hopefully, 2 instances of the Indian Astronomical Observatory, one of which is in India, where you might expect it to be, and the other is in Indonesia, which it shouldn't be. And clicking on both of them reveals they're both in exactly the same place if you actually look at the latitude and longitude. So really there's just one of them, and somehow someone's erroneously duplicated this and put one in Indonesia, which raises the question of where this data is actually coming from. How's it being created? And I don't know the answer to that. So what do we do next? Yes, the next thing I did, I changed my location to Mercury. So I was sort of, at this point, decided just to poke around the application, see what I could find, and wasn't specifically looking for anything. And I came across some elliptical shapes, which I'll show you down here if I can find them. Here we go. So you can see on the left these big elliptical shapes, which actually turned out to be the rings of Saturn. And you can see in the screenshot on the right, they're not there. And the only difference is that I changed the zoom level very slightly. And I found several instances of this sort of effect throughout the application, where stuff would be clearly visible at one zoom level, and at a very marginally different zoom level, it's gone. So depending on what zoom level you start with, you may be totally oblivious to certain features. And I've no idea if that's intentional, but this system didn't sort of say there's stuff that you can't see, you might want to zoom out or something. And I just have no idea how you would see these things if you didn't know they were there. So what did we do after that? I decided to test the find functionality. Now this is a feature you use to place yourself anywhere in the universe, and I decided to look for internal inconsistencies. So as you start to type, the system will give you suggestions of things that might match, and so I would then look for those known matches. And whilst it mostly worked, there were a number of anomalies there. So let's take a look at some of those. So here's one. So I started off typing my name in, STE, and the first suggestions all contain an STE until you get to V star V512 AUR, which doesn't contain any of the letters, let alone all of them. So no idea why that is being matched. Furthermore, when I search for this known match, it obviously exists, I was unable to find it. I tried searching for V star, for 512, as you can see down the bottom here. I searched for 512, nothing is found. I searched for AUR, and actually there was so many matches to AUR that if it was there, it didn't show up, because only about the first 6 or 7 results were listed. And I found a few other of these instances where there are known matches that just don't get found.
Steve, before you jump on, if you have a quick look at those screenshots, what's interesting is you can see it's the Simbad match that has happened, and that's when it goes off to the external server to find the information back. So if you really wanted you'd have to look at the message that's being sent out and probably do different searches just as normal gets onto that server rather than in the application.
That's really interesting. I didn't realise that's what it was doing. I assumed all of this was internal, although it did occur to me that the files that get installed didn't look big enough to contain all of the data in the universe. So, but I never thought to do what you did with the proxy. Yeah, that would have made for much more useful and interesting testing. So, what do we do here? Right. Oh yes, so in this case I started off with searching for AUR, which as you can see returns a whole load of matches. And then I just added a semicolon on the end, expecting not to find any matches at all. But it found 2. And there's no indication why. Now that we know that that string is getting put into a get, I presume it's causing some sort of syntax breakage or something like that.
But the interesting thing is the ones that get from the server are always put on the end of the list. So the fact that you're seeing only one match there means it's the one from the get that has actually worked.
There's 2 matches there. There's AURA and then Auriga.
And is that 2 separate ones, or is that one?
That's 2 separate ones.
It might be one that's got a comma in it. Unless you were going through a proxy, you wouldn't actually really know whether that was...
No, they must be 2 because the first one is bolded. AURA is bolded.
Cool. Yep.
That's the one that's currently selected. If you hit enter, then that's the one you'll get taken to.
Yeah, I don't think it's caused any issues on the get, because it has actually matched that Auriga one.
Yes. So similar thing happened with a hash. This one's really weird. I put a pipe symbol on the end of AUR, and look what it matched. B cat, B C N B boo. I can't explain that at all. So, did I do anything more? Oh yeah, I just tried searching for a hash symbol on its own, and there were no matches, even though when I put a hash on the end of AUR, it did find matches. So It's way too weird for me. I think to diagnose this, we need to get into a much lower level. I think, like you're saying, with the get and playing with that directly. So that was, I think, as far as I went with playing with the searching. There's clearly more you could do if you wanted to. So the next thing I did was go on to the eclipse of the sun. And I found myself a whole load of lists of those. And what I found was all the ones that occurred in sort of AD dates, I could verify all of those. They actually, Stellarium says they happen. However, when I tried all of or a number of BC ones, none of them occurred. So there should have been one on the 14th of December in 1 BC, according to Wikipedia. The nearest I found was 12 days away on the 26th. There was a close one. It wasn't really even an eclipse, although it was very close. Similarly, on the 19th of July, 1 BC, there should have been one. And again, there's a close one 12 days away. Now, I don't know if that's just coincidence that they're both 12 days out. If I had more time, I'd try a larger set of those. But and I tried the oldest recorded one, which is in 2134 BC, and again, about 6 days away, there's a near eclipse. But on the 22nd, when it was supposed to happen, it wasn't even close. So interesting that none of the BC ones occur on the Stellarium. One of the questions I pose myself is, how might we use Stellarium to find out when an eclipse is going to happen? And I didn't find a neat way to do that. Obviously, you can just sort of wind the timescale up really fast and sit there and watch it, but that could take a very long time.
Get yourself at the moon, wait till the sun goes out.
Again, I did wonder if we could open up the data files. Is there a way to actually look at the data in there? Perhaps there isn't. I don't know. The mathematics behind when eclipses occur is way too complicated for me. So, there was another strangeness that occurred, which, where is it? Here we go. At the eclipse in year 632, look what happened to the shape of the objects. They start off round, and as it goes into eclipse, the sun and moon kind of go egg-shaped, then they go extremely egg-shaped, and then as it comes out of eclipse, they go back round again. So,
is that happening close to the horizon? I noticed the colours changing.
The colour changes purely because the sun's coming out from behind the moon.
Yeah, all right. The reason I ask that is that I wonder if it's doing something silly with, something interesting with a diffraction of the atmosphere. But that doesn't help me work out why it changes from a tall ellipse to a horizontally ellipse. Sleep deprived, I don't know what I'm saying.
But I had the ground turned off for that, so it shouldn't be.
Yeah, you get to turn the ground off. We're going to turn off that. Bending things out of shape when it gets close to the horizon. Yeah.
So, yeah, that was one of a number of sort of visual anomalies that I observed, but couldn't really explain. So I'll just run through a few of the other things I observed. So I've described the sort of approach I've taken, and actually one of the common themes of this was, whilst I was perhaps looking to test one thing, I kept on observing something else that I wasn't looking for. and sometimes couldn't even tell if it was doing the right thing. So if we take labeling, I've got 3 screenshots here that show what's happening at very slightly different zoom levels. So on the left we start off with 2 objects showing, both of which have got labels. Then as we zoom, one of them loses a label, and then both of them lose their labels. And I kind of assumed that...
They're still within the window.
Oh yeah. And it might be intentional that when an object is smaller than a certain amount, its label disappears, because you couldn't have labels for everything. But maybe there's nothing to it. Maybe it's just me not understanding, because goodness knows there was a lot of stuff that I didn't understand in here. Here's another one of stuff disappearing, like almost everything disappearing. So at the top we've got, well, hopefully you can see a nebula here, and you may be able to see it's got very square edges to it. I don't know if that's visible. And in fact, this one here has very straight edges there, here, and there. And while I was looking at it, I was thinking, that is pretty improbable. And then just a minor change of zoom level, and you get what we got below. Just about everything vanishes. What I later found by looking through the file system is that actually these nebulae are screenshots. And if I can bring one up on here, here's my hypersnap. There we go. Yeah, hopefully you can see on there in hypersnap. This is the oops. Yeah, this one here is one of the nebulae, and that one there is the other one. And there's a folder full of all these nebulae. So yeah, that was a bit of an oddity. I could sort of understand why they might disappear. I have no idea why all the other stars, or almost all the other stars in the entire screen, disappeared at that zoom level.
And where have you gone, Steve? You've disappeared.
So, here we go. This is what you're supposed to be looking at. Yes.
A different black screen. And there we go.
So, yeah, there's one star at the top there, and all the other stars have vanished. And just one little roll of the scroll wheel would flick you between the 2 of those views, which just seems bizarre. Other anomalies. Here's another one. Again, I wasn't testing this. I was just exploring, finding out what some of these functions did. And I was playing with the night view, which is a button down here in the toolbar at the bottom, which, when you turn on night view, turns the sky black and all the text goes red. And what I found completely inadvertently was this text up in the top left corner changes colour during the normal view depending on how dark the sky is. So if the sky is dark, you get this lilac text, and if the sky is light, the text turns black to maintain a good contrast ratio. However, when you're in night view, I've got exactly the same 2 scenes. Here we've got red text on black background, but down the bottom I presume we have black text on a black background, and hence we can't see it. So, right, so I think that comes to the end of all the anomalies that I found. And actually, I went from, when I initially looked at this thing, thinking, Christ, I'm never going to find anything because I just don't understand this domain. there's way too much data. How am I ever going to know if it's doing the right thing? Actually, after a couple of hours of testing, I felt that I could actually find tons and tons of stuff, despite still not knowing anything about the domain. It was just a case of progressively building up an understanding, largely by taking the happy path through, but crucially keeping an eye out for everything that's going on. I mean, this thing about the disappearing text, I'd never have designed a test to find it, but just by paying attention I noticed it happened, and perhaps that's a key learning for this sort of application. So anyway, that's me done.
Oh, thank you, Steve. That was fascinating. we have a chat about this on Sunday night, and yeah, there's loads. Let's see. I spent a couple of hours exploring this. First hour a week ago, second hour yesterday. Not yesterday. Second hour today. I found some interesting things. I started off without necessarily feeling I was going to find any bugs, but just to play. And the world of Macintosh gave me a bug right in my lap, which I'll come to at the end, because in order to get out of it, I have to restart my kit. So it delivered that one to me, and then that one stopped me testing. So that was the first one I found. It's the last one, potentially, I'm going to show you. Let me share my screen again. So there we are, that one and that one. Share that, there we go. So you might be able to see something happen. What you've got is the world is going round, or rather the world is going round at some kind of speed. We are watching a sped up version of what the sky would do if we had no Earth in the way and we're looking at the whole sky at once. What Steve was talking about just now is to do with turning this thing on. There we are. Turn the atmosphere on, it goes black, the atmosphere off. It does various different things, but that's not me turning the atmosphere off there. It's doing things that I don't understand, because this is a very big application in terms of the amount that it shows you. I'm always interested in how much information can I get into one test, and I can get out in front of that test into my eyes, and it turns out this application is very rich for that. And I didn't really cotton on to that until quite late on. I'm going to stop that going, because my guess is it's killing everybody's bandwidth. There we are. So I'd just like to point out we're currently focused on the bright star of the pig, which is apparently a major star in the Romanian cosmos, and I think we've got a couple of Romanians in. I like the secondary name for that is also the alarm clock. If anybody can tell me why the bright star of the pig is also the alarm clock, then well, seasonal wishes to you. So one of the things I did was thinking about data. I had quite a mess about my first hour exploring things and not finding much apart from the aforementioned bug, which I'm going to show you at the end. But I thought to myself, what if I position myself at Bethlehem at year 0 and I looked at the heavens and I find satellites? Oh, that would be cool. That would be cool. That would be a nice bug, because it seems like it's immediately wrong. Yet at the same time, if I'm not going to see satellites, then all the satellites have to also have details about when they went up and when they came back down. So I looked to the sky, and I'll see if I can do this. This little belt buckle down the bottom here, which some of you may see, turns on the satellites. And there ain't no satellites to be seen. None at all. So that's nice to know. Let's just stop that. Let's go to today. Do you see we've got a whole bunch of extra things have turned up? Let me speed up time a bit. Now you can see that there's, turn off a couple of things. Those are all satellite paths. I don't know how easy that is for you to see, but from my screen we're covered in satellites. So one of the things I could do with this is to go back in time at speed and to say let's go back in time. Unfortunately, this gave me a terrible headache, so I don't really want to do it here and now. You can move back and forth in time, and you can find that the first satellite up was, I have it in my notes. I want to share my notes with you, really. Let me pop that up and change my screen sharing so that you can see my notes. Screen share off, screen share on, share my notes. There we are. There we are. What does it have? See if I can get less hidden. So I found there were a few satellites in 1968. The earliest I found was Atlas Centaur 2, which was launched at the moment that 1963 started, which isn't what Wikipedia says. Wikipedia doesn't say that Atlas Centaur 2 was launched on New Year's Eve at the moment that everybody snogs around a tree. So there's something not quite right about the data for the Atlas Centaur 2 satellite, which also wasn't the first up. Couldn't find the first, but that's the first I found. Couldn't find Sputnik at all. I move forwards, so let's assume that the data is not always reliable underneath these things. There were some satellites in 1968. There were many satellites, and then I found that around 2020, and I think we'll go back to my previous screen share, like that, like that, like that. Can you see what I see now? Obviously that's a stupid question, isn't it? All I get is Alan and Steve nodding, and I can't see them because I've got my notes over the screen with them on it. I've just got the bottom of people's chins. We're going to move forward to 2020. No, 20. Now I've lost my notes. 2019 at 12:13 at 8 o'clock in the evening. Can somebody remember that? 2018?
Which one? 2018, 19, 20? You said 3 days.
Let's do. Okay, let's go. Let's put in the one I remember. So some of you can see we've got something that appears to be going very fast around the Earth. That's very weird because I'm operating in real time, and right now I'm having difficulty moving that window. We have a satellite that seems to be circling the Earth every couple of seconds, which is just Superman in whatever that film was.
If we're 19, I mean, in the future we'll have satellites going that fast.
We will. But watch what happens as the day moves on. On the day of doom for satellites, the 13th, 14th of December 2019, around about 8 o'clock at night, everything is still there. We are gone.
Wow, it's like a Y2K bug.
Yeah, does that send a chill through your bones? Is that the Mayan calendar for the satellites? I'm not entirely certain. But so clearly, the satellite data does have start and end dates for each satellite, which I liked. I'm tempted to say it's got start dates and the end dates are all the same. I don't know. So that was a nice thing that I found. I enjoyed watching things move round and round. I found that, let's say I'd click on, we're on Saturn. We're looking at Saturn now. I can turn on O to show me Saturn's orbit, and I can zoom in on Saturn's orbit. There we are. Please zoom in on Saturn, you rotten box. Can you see what I'm zooming in on? I've got a red line. Let's move time forwards. And when Saturn leaves the screen, that red line also leaves the screen. So if you're trying to go follow something around the sky, it comes and goes. This red line appears and disappears. Things arrive, things disappear, and we don't really know why. I found it very difficult to test because of that. I didn't know what it should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Right now, that same cursor that was very small over Saturn appears to take up around about a quarter of the window that we're looking at. I don't know if it's a bug or not. I don't know if it's doing the thing we expected it to or not, which brings me back to the bug that I was going to show you. I can zoom in and zoom out, mirror with this thing. Let's stop time. The satellites have gone away. Let's stop time. We'll zoom in on Canopus. I can say, let's look at Canopus. Let's look at the Morning Star. Let's look at Procyon. Lots of nice things turn up there. I'm going to zoom in now. You can't see this with 2 fingers on my trackpad. And there we are. We zoom in and we zoom out. Now I'm going to show you I can no longer click on Regulus. I can no longer click on the Moon. I can't make the information about Procyon go away. I can't pan the thing. I can do it all with the keyboard. So there is a bug on OS 10. I'm using Mavericks, not Yosemite, that when you zoom in, it chucks away a whole bunch of keyboard navigation, of mouse navigation, which makes life very difficult if you're used to navigating with a mouse. I'm not sure if the scroll wheel turns up, because I've not plugged one of those in yet. I am aware that this is probably a Mac-related bug, because a similar one has been a similar bug has been reported, but for Yosemite only on Stellarium's site. So that's what I found. There were lots of things I really want to go and have a look at. I found a log. There's all that text that Steve referred to. There's a whole bunch of scripting stuff in here that seems to be new. But I'm with Alan. One of the most interesting things about this is the ability to move through time, is the ability to say what did everything look like at this time. And particularly once you start to get into geological time, the fact that time is basically a human construct, and if you say what's the 1st of January, it isn't the same if you go back in time. Well, why should we possibly assume it's going to be the same if we go forwards? There's a whole bunch of stuff that lives behind this free-to-download desktop app that is immensely complex and the subject of huge, long arguments and many pages. And here it is in Stellarium for our delectation and for us to go, yeah, it doesn't do what we expected. One of the reasons it doesn't do what we expected is because we expect too little. Stellarium is doing an immensely complex thing, and I think possibly the least complex thing it does is put dots on your screen. Possibly one of the most complex things that it does. So I've really enjoyed testing this. I was going to give you a narrative of my testing, but that's not really worked. So that's that for me. I found one bug with exploring. I found lots of things that could be bugs. I managed to get it. Look at that. It's like I was in control. It crashed on me twice. I have the stack trace. I can't read it, but it crashed on me twice. So no. There's lots of interesting things it does. I'd like to test this further. But I think that more than being a domain expert in astronomy, I'd want to be a domain expert in dates, and I think I'd have to be deeply involved in the application itself. I'm kind of tempted in some ways. I had a lot of fun testing it, but I don't think I tested it as much as explored it with a sense of, oh my god, this is deep. Does that make sense? So that brings us to 5 to 9. We were going to kind of say what our thoughts were in general. I've sort of summarised with that what my thoughts were in general. Steve, anything more to add?
So when I was using it and playing with it, I had no idea. When I was playing with it, I had no idea what was going on. So I think when you guys were playing with it, you're able to observe things differently than me. Like, I'm basically just seeing stuff on a screen. I have no idea what any of it means. So I was probably going too fast for it to make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I found you had to go to a much lower level, and because for about the first half hour I was totally overwhelmed. Like, how the heck am I going to tell if this is doing the right thing? It's just by going to real basics, looking at interaction, data entry, and just poking around and looking for anomalies, and bit by bit I just got comfortable with it, found some things to go chasing after, but I did worry for quite a while that I was just not going to do anything useful at all. So perhaps that is a key learning for any really large, complex application, is sort of, rather than go looking for the really bad, the horrible bugs, which may well be in there, just go back to basics, start with really simple stuff, and that might then actually take you on a thread that leads you to something really bad.
With this app in particular, you do have to spend time getting used to it, because it has nuances all of its own, like those overlapping dialogues where you can see it's there but you can't get at it, so you have to switch it, undisplay it in order to display it again.
Oh yeah, and they're translucent, and you can't tell which one's on top sometimes.
Yeah.
Shall I share my screen? There we are. So if you're watching me, then we can put the location window up there, and we can also put the time window up, and you'll notice these two are now on screen at the same time, and they're kind of overlapping, and they're at different intensities.
I can see you.
Oh
Yep,
dear.
not showing your screen yet.
Oh dear. There we are. Share. Yeah. So here we've got currently 3 windows. Incidentally, you can drag it around from up here, but you click slightly below it where it's the same color and you can't drag it anymore. User interface is just lovely. So we've got lots of overlapping things. Let's bring all the things up. Now, that doesn't help me use it as a user interface. As a user using in a user interface, I'm stuck. Yeah.
But you get used to it, and you just start to work with it.
I felt like I was given a bit of a gift, being that I'm on the Mac, in that it had this awful pain in the arse thing where once you zoomed in once, or indeed used 2 fingers anywhere on your laptop once, the whole thing stopped responding to mouse. Because it gave me lots of false positives. I thought it was doing all sorts of funny things, and really it wasn't. It was just this one bug had put me in a funny situation. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. I kind of needed the one bug. Oh, must stop screen share now. I needed the one bug to encourage me to think, yeah, this has got problems in, because I saw lots of problems that were ultimately all the same thing, which was that I had this intermittent problem with the mouse. So particularly as it was up and down quite a lot, this program for me. Therefore, I hadn't particularly noticed that when I scrolled, it didn't work as well as I wanted it to. So, yeah.
And
It's
the thing is,
in different ways.
so do you think it was crashing for you because you got a slightly older Mac? Because this thing is pretty processor intensive and can eat into the memory.
Yeah. It really makes a pig of it. I was working at the time. I'd actually shut my machine down completely and was running only the one thing on it, and I wasn't at my usual location, so I only had the one screen, and it was all very ascetic. So it might be that I'm running on an older Mac, but it's not that old. It's a year or so old.
The thing is,
it was a fairly beefy machine when I bought it, so yeah.
I had it running
I
in.
don't do that. On the other hand, it did my battery from 45% down to 8% in about 50 minutes. Nothing's done that before.
Because I had it on the Mac in a VM and it was working fine.
Yeah. In a VM?
Yeah.
Why did you bother?
Because
Well, I mean, that's not.
I run things in VMs. That's what I do. That's how I work. And I go as far as I can in the VM before I go external.
Yeah, well, fair enough. It does make it all very clean. I was interested because this is it's a freeware. It's an open source application that is available on the App Store. And on the App Store, this open source application will cost you 13 quid. If you download it from the website, it's not signed in a way that the Mac will let you install it without bypassing a little bit of security. So that's, it's got really curious things in it. It's, yeah, I'm very pleased it's on the App Store. I'm very surprised with what it does. It's like they've decided to put it on the App Store, make some money out of it, and to make it a bit more difficult if you're going to download it from elsewhere. I don't know if that's conscious or not.
I mean, it's
yes,
good.
I don't.
Anyone on the webinar that hasn't downloaded Stellarium 1 should download it and just have a play with it, because it's just great to watch.
It's glorious to play with. Yeah, really nice. And yeah, you point yourself at the moon and see when it goes in front of the sun. That kind of, it's lovely.
Yep, and you can pretend to be on the moon. It's great.
Yes. Select the right location and off you go. It's not one of these ones that lets you fly around, is it? You don't fly from A to B. You have to stay in one place until you move clonk. Yeah, it's not.
I think so.
Yeah. No, I had a lovely time testing it. So that's us. I guess. Are we signing off? We don't have to sign off, but it's been an hour. We should probably send our best wishes to Tony, who couldn't be with us.
We're going to mock him, and we forgot.
Yeah, you're right. We're going to mock him.
That's as close as we're going to get, I think.
Yeah. Hey, Tony. Nice looking blue. I hope you're feeling better. Anything else we should be saying? We should be saying that we are running a course called Black Ops Testing, where we'll be, well, just as interactive, actually rather more interactive than this thing which you're probably watching sometime in the future. There's 4 of us going to be taking a real application and playing with it for your dictation and giving it to you to play with and challenging you to test it just as well, if not better. And then we'll be learning from that, learning from each other. The more people we have in the room, the more everybody learns. We're looking forward to it. It's in January.
January the 23rd.
Thank you, Alan. January the 23rd. Sleep deprived again. Can't work.
Full details are on blackopstesting.com.
Oh yes, Alan's put the things up on the website. That's up in the chat. So that's good. That's what we'll be doing in January. Come and join us if you like. Tell your friends to come and join us if they like. The more people, the merrier it'll be. And you do need merry by the time you get to January the 23rd. It's a long way after Christmas.
Yep. So I guess that's us. I guess seasonal greeting, festive cheer, happy, non-denominational holiday goodness.
Oh, humbug.
All right, so I'm going to sign off. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night, all.
Right, see you all.